Good evening, Miss Stone. I would like to thank you again for everything you've done this past quarter, and I really do appreciate the hard work that you've put in to try to make me a better reader. But so far in these first several weeks of this school year, I feel as though I've had made some gradual improvements that have allowed me to be a better reader. I feel as though there is some key qualities that I have gotten better at recognizing in text, but there are still many things I need to work on. Overall, as a whole, though, I think being in this course and having the opportunity to read classical pieces of literature, and most importantly, learn what to focus on when reading pieces written by Prose and Nabokov, I've most definitely had the chance to evaluate myself as a reader and the components I look in which commonly hold me back from understanding pieces as a whole. So, really, I'm going to be talking about how last year I wasn't the best reader, to the strides that I've made this first quarter, and the opportunity that I'm getting to make myself a better reader as I go on to college. Essentially, upon taking this class, I didn't realize that I was reading in a way that prevented me from comprehending the full message that the author was attempting to communicate. I read in a way that allowed for me to only get a sense of the main idea rather than slight hints and examples that they were trying to express. Well, to start, Nabokov, he composed a list of attributes one must possess in order to be a good reader. This list, in my opinion, was a little too extreme. However, his ideas appear to be slightly similar to Prose's. Although they created their arguments in different manners, they both essentially incorporated three of the same ideals, which I took upon myself to be my greatest areas of improvement. First off, creativity and imagination are useful. I was never the most creative when it came to reading because reading was never my thing. But imagination, I love reading when I can dive into a book and be a part of the book. Secondly, it is most important to read analytically and be alone rather than to gain emotional attachment. And thirdly, you must pay attention to and understand the actual words and sentences a writer is using. In reading Nabokov, I realized that I was struggling with focusing on everything the author says rather than just attaining the main idea. Usually, if I'm not interested in the details an author adds, I won't put forth an effort to understand them. Going back to last year, I was never engaged because what we were reading was not my cup of tea, if I'm being honest. And as this year came, after reading Nabokov, I realized that I have to cut that out of my way of learning to become a better reader and strive to the goals that I want to obtain. I also didn't agree with what Nabokov was communicating, so I automatically stopped paying attention to him. I learned that this weakens my reading skills, a fact that I never paid mind to beforehand. However, when reading Brave New World, I was completely detached. The novel didn't really spark my interest, so I read the entire book nonchalantly. I got bored with the book, so I didn't dig for deeper meaning or even use my analyzation skills. After this analyzation of both forms of reading, I noted that this is where I must improve. Therefore, when reading Beowulf, I tried to build on my observation skills and not allow for my opinions and beliefs to affect the way I read. I forced myself to find balance between being an overly engaged reader and a disinterested one. However, I found this to be harder than I really thought because what I was learning last year, it was kind of hard to detach. So it was kind of new for me as I began, and it was really difficult. But as I was reading Beowulf was another piece of work that I couldn't necessarily find interest in. So it was hard for me to pay attention and maintain the same energy all throughout the reading. Regardless of how much I tried, I just couldn't get myself to observe the words and structure. However, I was more aware that I needed to do this, so I found myself taking note of slight examples without even realizing it. For example, I found myself differentiating between pagan and Christian beliefs in my head which made it easier to understand the actions of each character. This religious thing was also very hard because it was kind of hard for me to look at another religion growing up in a Christian household. I had to put that aside this year, and I knew I had to put that aside last year. And as I'm going on, I know I'm going to read things that don't spark my beliefs, but I'm going to have to move past that to become a better reader. This helped me realize the motivation behind the characters and the poem. I would not have been able to make the same connections had I not been aware of what I needed to look for and focus on. I still had more room for improvement. When reading the Canterbury Tales, I was able to comprehend it on a deeper level, paying attention to detail, diction, structure, and connecting dots of symbolism. I paid attention to the importance of the number 3, the irony in the corruptness of the partner, and even took note of how Chaucer never really judged the partner regardless of how shamefully wicked he was. This therefore allowed for me to gain a deeper understanding to the tale. However, I could not do the same when I was reading the prologue. I struggle with it all, the different character traits. Although I was able to improve my reading skills when reading the Canterbury Tales, I still thought I needed to further build on my attention span, especially when I'm uninterested. Also, I thought if I was more imaginative while reading, it would have actually helped me understand the character traits. So when I was reading prose, I found it important to build on my creativity while reading, as well as focusing well. In an attempt to make sure my focus doesn't shift, I highlighted while reading prose, and that was a key thing for me. When I was highlighting, I wasn't just mindlessly reading. I was engaged through every word, and I was reading it with passion. This really did help me to be more attentive in reading, even if I wasn't interested in it. Prose work wasn't necessarily a storyline, so I couldn't practice utilizing my creativity as much as I wanted to, but at least this left 1 out of 3 areas of improvement left. Although I was able to accomplish the other 2 ideals, I still needed to practice them with all my reading. So when I'm reading Paradise Lost, I still wanted to practice these newly acquired skills, but I mainly wanted to focus on using my imagination. Paradise Lost was fairly easy to me to use my creativity because it was a fictional-based story on the never-ending war between God and Satan. And this story followed very creative ideas within itself. So I was able to gain a sense of imagination due to the explicit imagery in scripture-like feel, along with its biblical references, definitely made this my favorite reading. And as I said before, as I got down to the Canterbury Tales, I was able to push aside religion and the belief that I mainly struggled on, and it was a lot easier for me to use my imagination and go along with the story. It was very easy to me, in my opinion, to understand and read because I was able to utilize the skills use the skills simultaneously of imagination and creativity. I know I'm far from where I want to be at the end of the year, but Miss Stone, with your help, there's a lot in me, and I know that I'm asking you to pull that out of me. And with the little progress that I've made in using the 3 skills in the book I've really preached on, and that's using my creativity, imagination, how it's important to read analytically and being a loaf reader rather than gain emotional attachment, and that I have to pay attention and understand the actual words and sentences a writer is using. If I can use your knowledge and pick your brain to gain these 3 strengths in my reading, I know I'll become the reader that I've always dreamed on. I would like to thank you again, Ms. Stone, and have a great night.